Without further ado, can I introduce Councillor Hugg?
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to this meeting that's trying to bring together a broad range of employers, small and medium-sized businesses from across Westminster. I've been holding a series of meetings like this with different key stakeholders, with our residents, with the voluntary sector, with and yesterday with some of Westminster's more traditional partners in the bids and property sector. But we were very clear from day one as a new administration that we want to broaden out the pool of people that Westminster talks to about the future of the city, about the economy and jobs and our communities, and this meeting is the first step to try and do that. I'm sure it's great to see so many people here. I'm sure when we try and do this in future, we'll hopefully get even more people involved. But we know there's a number of people who've joined here who have had some contact with the council before in different ways, and there are some people who are been engaging with the council in this way for the first time. So welcome everybody. I've had a whirlwind of a last month, and we all have in the team here, getting our feet under the table, trying to understand the key ways in which we can make the council deliver on the agenda that we are elected on. And as I've said, one of the key things we want to try and do is listen to more people and get more different perspectives about what the council does well, what the council could do better, and we want to have a sort of ongoing dialogue with you on that, and that's why I'm really keen to get to questions as quickly as possible. One of the things we want to try and do as a council is improve the way we consult with residents and key stakeholders. Basically, the aim is to do it earlier and to have more genuine choice in that consultation rather than just sort of handing down things as a fait accompli at the end of the process. So we really want to get those voices into the council at officer level, at political level, at an earlier stage, so we can be guided by you to avoid some of the pitfalls that the council may have fallen into in the past, and to help make sure that the outcomes that we're working towards are the right ones, and what we're able to deliver delivers for everybody. We are going to be a more resident-focused council. But we recognise that many of our, large numbers of our residents work in Westminster and in many of the organisations that you represent, and also the businesses and whether it's from the hospitality sector through to all sorts of different shops and different types of businesses make our city an exciting place to be, and that's why we want to work with you in lots of different ways to help you grow, help the city grow, and have a sort of mutually supportive agenda. But and that's what we want to take forward. We've talked in our manifesto a lot, and in the campaign a lot about the importance of our local high streets, and we see that as a key feature, particularly post-pandemic, as more and more people are working from home at least part of the time. There is a huge job of work across our sort of local high street centres, whether that's Harrow Road, Queensway, Lupus Street. Across the city there are loads of sort of local hubs that are the heart of those communities that need to see more attention and support from the council, and we are trying to so broaden out our engagement. We recognise the West End's hugely important. We recognise it employs a lot of people, but it isn't the only business centre in the city, and that's what we want to sort of change the focus. We want to focus on our local high streets with an integrated approach that brings together the commercial side in terms of tackling empty shops, pop-ups, integrating culture and economy together, but also with environment and active travel to try and make our local high streets the best they can be, places we want to spend time in, places that are easier to get to, and places that have a lively and active economy which can help deliver people's needs as part of our 15-minute neighbourhood approach. We talk a lot in the manifesto about community wealth building. We're looking at ways in which the council as an institution can help drive economic change in our communities, again, broadening out to cover the whole of the city. And we want to work with institutions across Westminster to find ways in which we can encourage more Westminster residents to get jobs in your organisations and we can work with you on training and other employment opportunities. We want to see that sort of virtuous circle of working with you to help employ people, to help the city grow, and making sure that growth is equitable across Westminster. I think those are some of the key principles that are going to be driving our approach. We talk a lot in the manifesto about tackling climate change and reducing carbon and air pollution. So that's a big part of what we want to do with all business stakeholders as well as our residents. And there's a lot of work that we want to get into about waste collections and other support services that you guys, many of you will rely on. And we've got Councillor de Moldenberg here who leads on some of that. And we know it's a join up between the public realm, transport and economy. So without further ado, I will hand over to my cabinet colleagues who are here in the room. So Tim, our deputy leader, do you want to explain a little bit about your role?
Yes, so I'm one of two deputy leaders here on the team, and the cabinet portfolio I'm responsible for is young people, learning and leisure, and that also covers culture. So it's your traditional children's services, education, including the Westminster Adult Education Service, the leisure offer, and then of course, being where we are, culture. And one of the things we're hoping to do, and we spoke to some institutions yesterday, is broaden access to culture in Westminster. Can I ask Councillor Less to turn her camera on and introduce herself?
Hi everyone, thank you very much for being here tonight. My name is Aisha Less. I'm a Church Street Ward Councillor first and foremost. I'm the other Deputy Leader and Cabinet Member for Communities and Public Protection, and my portfolio covers community engagement, resident engagement, business engagement, stakeholder engagement, and it's just about trying to ensure that everyone has a say about how we drive through our policies. My role also covers public protection, so that's policing, antisocial behaviour and licensing policy. And those of you that are here that have obviously businesses that have licensed properties would be interested to hear your thoughts and how we can drive our agenda through. So that's all from me for now, but if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box. Thank you.
Thanks, Aisha. If we go back to the room, Councillor Barraclough.
Hi everybody, my name is Jeff Barraclough, and I'm responsible for planning and economic development in the administration. That includes relationships with business, but also town planning enforcement, which I know is going to be of interest to many of you. I'm a business person. I've spent my entire career working in business, and I'm head of product strategy for a technology company, although I'm going to be doing less of that and spending more time at City Hall as we go forward. I'm very keen to hear your experiences working with Westminster at the moment, and what we can change, what we can do differently, and also what you like.
Brilliant, thanks, Jeff. And finally, can I ask Councillor de Moldenberg to turn his camera on and introduce himself?
It's already on.
Hello, everybody. My name's Paul de Moldenberg. I'm a councillor for the Hyde Park Ward, and I'm the Cabinet Member for City Management and Air Quality. And my portfolio is quite a broad one. It includes waste collection, street cleaning, highways, the public realm, parking, cycling, walking, parks, trees. Did I mention air quality? I think I did. And surprisingly of all, I'm also responsible for the mortuary. On a much more happier note, I'm also responsible for the council's communications as well.
Thanks, Paul. That's really helpful. So we'll get into the main item tonight, which is a Q&A session. Do raise your hands or feel free to put questions in the chat, and I will probably give them to Adam, and Adam will either answer himself or he'll ask a cabinet member to jump in. So off we go. I've got a first question here from Angela, which is about Victoria Coach Station.
Do you want to ask it on?
Yeah, Angela, do you want to unmute and ask your question about Victoria Coach Station?
Yeah, first say hi. I'm here in sort of dual capacity. I'm chair of the Belgravia Traders Association, but I'm also head of fundraising for Change Please, the charity that works with homeless. And obviously Westminster has the highest homeless numbers in the UK. So that's both. But this is really coming more from the Belgravia Traders. The coach station, which personally I quite like, but an awful lot of local residents and businesses don't, does draw huge amounts of traffic to an area that is not really designed or can cope with it very well. Elizabeth Street, a lot of the National Express coaches come racing down it. It's very dangerous and it wrecks the roads on a regular basis. And I know it's not owned by the council. I know that the building is leased to TfL from Grosvenor, but at some, I mean, I personally don't want to get rid of the coach station, but is there no way that the council can put pressure on to decrease the amount of traffic that comes racing around here? I mean, I've seen so many near misses, I can't tell you. And one day something horrid is going to happen.
I mean, obviously there are a number of discussions around the future of the coach station that were going on a couple of years ago. I think the focus at the moment is very much about managing the situation on site as it is. So, but I think if I can pass the Councillor to Moldenberg about what we could do working with TfL to try and improve those, to avoid the near misses and manage bus speeds, coach speeds and everything else. Is there anything you want to jump in on that, Paul?
Yeah, I'd be very happy to find out more about the situation. I'm not familiar greatly as much as you and other Belgravia residents and businesses around the issues around the coach station, but I'd be very happy to meet you and your colleagues on site and see for myself the concerns that you've just expressed.
No, I think you'd be I think that'd be very beneficial. So thank you. Can we arrange that? Yeah.
That's great. So I mean,
if you drop me a line,
at
the council, then we can.
I will do that.
Find a slot in the diary.
And can I just say thank you to Westminster Council, because we had a great big street party around here over the weekend for the Jubilee, and your people, your events people, Salil in particular, were fantastic. They've been so helpful the whole way through. So thank you.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate. We've been saying a lot publicly about the amazing work that our events team and our street cleaners have been doing over the weekend, and I was out meeting the street cleaners earlier on today to say thank you for the amazing job they did. But our events team absolutely knocked it out of the park and put on both a national spectacle and enabled all the community events to happen at the same time. So it was really impressed with the work that they did. But I'll just go back to Victoria Coach Station. What I'm sure would be helpful for Paul is if you can include any previous discussions you've had with the council about those particular things, and identifying any particular hotspots where you think that things are most at risk, and then we can also take them up with TfL as well. So, but great that you can meet with Paul on site.
Thanks, Angela. Next question. Thank you. Next question comes from Richard Hyams, Studio Architects. He asks, for topics such as sustainability, how do we as a series of different businesses providing various different services to Westminster join together our knowledge and technologies to build a better combined response to the issues? And I know Debbie Jackson's on the call as well, Adam, if you wanted to pull her in on that one.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, sustainability sits, we have particularly Councillor Ryan Jude, who is working across a number of portfolios to help us on the sustainability agenda. But Jeff, if you want to come in and then go to Debbie.
I'd be keen to hear more from Richard as to the kind of things he would like to see us be doing.
Yeah, do you want to come on the call?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity to do this. It's really good to meet you all. Yeah, we've been working now with Westminster for a number of years on the Ebury estate, which you're probably well aware of. And one thing that's interesting with a lot of businesses on the line here is that each of us are kind of bringing social impact benefit, and we're trying to take apprentices on, and we're doing lots of little things all as individual businesses. And what would be really interesting to think about is how on topics such as sustainability, which are big and need combined effort from people, how we start to pool that knowledge and resource to actually get a better benefit out of it. That's what I'm kind of thinking about? Because I think there's so much skill in the businesses you've got in Westminster that somehow if we all try and do our own little bit individually, it won't be as powerful as doing something together. That's the kind of the sort of crux of the point.
No, I absolutely agreed with that. And one thing we are finding is there is some great work going on with little bits of the council, and it's on our side joining that up and finding ways that the council can help you join other stuff up. So we'll bring in Debbie briefly and then.
Sorry, yeah, hi Richard, good to see you. I just
Hi.
gave a thumbs up instead of putting my hand up, but both apply. So thanks for the comment. And one of the things that we are working on in our economy work is the development of a green business strategy approach, working title, but it's something that we really want to do more on. And I think creating that opportunity for networking across the businesses in Westminster and the businesses we work with in order to share ideas, but also build on ideas and establish opportunities for collaboration is a really good point, because one of the things we want to do is demonstrate real forward thinking in terms of sustainable cities and sustainable businesses. So thanks for your enthusiasm. We'll put your name at the top of the list, and we're just developing that work now. So yeah, thanks for the comment. And I've got a number of people from my team listening to this call, so yeah, excellent. We'll hunt you down, don't worry.
Excellent, brilliant. Well, happy to, thank you.
Great. So Michelle, you've got your hand up. Do you want to ask a question?
You're on mute, Michelle.
I think that's a bit better. Yeah, I was very sort of interested to hear your opening remarks about jobs within communities. I just sort of wanted to know what levels of support you thought that you would provide for that, because there are a lot of existing schemes that sometimes may not be beneficial depending on the type of structure your company has. For example, some of the entry-level schemes may not be appropriate for certain team dynamics. And so I wondered what kind of support you were going to give, not just to the businesses, but also to those who were seeking employment, because a lot of the issue is sort of cultural fit. It's understanding what the expectations are from an employer. And I think what I find very difficult is it seems that some of the schemes of the past seem to rely 100% on the employer to effectively teach candidates things that shouldn't really be in our realm. It should be really the job of the university or the college or the school. And it's as if we are sort of almost having candidates arrive and we're having to almost do this induction that goes way beyond what I feel an employer should be doing. So I wanted to sort of understand, obviously I know it's quite new because you've only sort of just come about the council, but how you thought you were going to develop this jobs in the community programme.
I think what we would really appreciate is a way for you to feed in some more detail behind what you've just said to some of the senior officers and to Jeff, because we're currently recruiting a new director of a senior director level role which will be relevant to this. I think there's work that we can do with Westminster Employment Service, there's work that we can do with Westminster Adult Education Service, there's work that we can do with the different colleges and stuff like that. It's trying to work out how we are learning as councillors how this all joins up, and work between Tim's team and Jeff's team about how these will work together. But we're really keen to get more detail about that, what hasn't worked, and any examples of stuff where you think it has worked. Well, because we're open to looking again at all the schemes that have gone before, and to try and learn from them, so we don't want to keep making the same mistakes again. I think there is we want to help employers who want to provide skills and training and support for people, and we want to find support for schools and other institutions to help get people job ready. But there's a place you can meet in the middle there. I think we can help find that. And do either of you want to come in with this?
Well, I would say we're definitely in listening mode, Michelle. So exactly what Adam said just then. There are some interesting things going on in the city presently. Ways, the Adult Education Service, is doing an interesting program with Amazon Web Services, training up people in cloud computing, and that's entry-level stuff, and that's digital skills that people need. And we're very lucky that we've got one of only 2 digital hubs funded by the GLA here in Westminster, down in Pimlico. But really, we'd want to hear from you about what employers need. We totally get that there is a skills gap there. I don't know, Jeff, if you want to come in and say anything.
Yeah, I was just wondering, Michelle, is it the softer skills that you think people are missing, or
yeah, I mean, honestly, there are things that is quite unbelievable. Things that I suppose back in the day when I was young, you sort of take for granted. For example, I couldn't just confidently hire someone who was 22, 23, and with some basic training, even of a week or 2 weeks, leave them confidently to answer the phone. I mean, it's really got to that stage where it's not about us even saying, okay, there are some complicated projects we're working on. We need you to have tech skills. We need you to be a programmer. Do you know JavaScript? It isn't even at that level. These are just the basic fundamental, okay, answering the phone, understanding how to address senior management, understanding the importance of clients. It's all the kind of, it's as if, I don't know, it's as if they're living in a parallel universe. And I don't know, the schools, universities, I also feel that there's this protective bubble that unfortunately has been created. So when a young person comes into the workplace for a work placement and you sort of correct them on things, they seem quite shocked because they're not used to it, because they're used to being in an environment whereby they're always told that whatever they're doing is fantastic. Even if they're making spelling mistakes, grammatical mistakes, they're not corrected in school. And it's getting even worse than that, because even at university, because they're now paying consumers, they're not corrected at university either. So you just have these errors that kind of jump at you, and, just little things. And you sort of think, well, I can't just leave someone to write an email or to answer the phone, because I know that the email is going to be full of grammatical errors, and this is not even just about levels of education, whether the person has A levels or GCSEs. It goes way beyond that as well. And sometimes I feel that there are candidates that do have the right attitude, they want to learn, but I'm just sort of trying to figure out what is going on, what's gone wrong. I mean, I remember
I'm conscious we might not be able to solve the UK's education system here this afternoon, but I'll let Jeff come back quickly, and then
okay.
No, I was just going to ask, Hayley had her hand up, who's our head of economic development at the council. And Hayley, would you want to come on at this point?
Yeah, that's fine. Thanks, Jeff. Just going to say, in the interest of time, I'm really happy to have a chat with you, Michelle, about this issue. So I'm the interim director of economy at the moment. I head up the employment service as one of my services, but I also work really closely with our principal of the adult education service. And of course, all the education and training providers, including the schools, in the borough. So very happy to have an initial chat with you, and then we can make sure that we route all your concerns, through and have it as context, in terms of the development of provision, not just for the council's provision, but also, what we can influence with other providers as well.
Great.
Thanks, Hayley. That's really helpful. And I just got a thought in my head as well, that most local HEIs have employer advisory boards. Almost all of them do. So it'd be interesting to see if we can patch some of our local SMEs into some of those. So the next question I've got is from Lee, who asks about they're running a ballot for a new bid in Westminster to work alongside our Camden bid. Keen to get a meeting with Camden and Westminster to better share services and support roads like Charlotte Street, whilst support smaller and independent business and ensure all stakeholders benefit from bid work. Is this something the leader can facilitate?
I've already had a number of discussions with George Gould, who is my opposite number in Camden. We've had a long-standing working relationship before I became leader. So I think we are keen to see a more sort of collaborative working with Camden on issues in the West End and more strategically. I think I can't answer the specifics about Charlotte Street, but I think, the principle is we want to have a better working relationship with Camden. That's not about shared services or anything like trying to recreate Byborough. It's about trying to just have a more proactive engagement at officer level and at a political level about some of those shared challenges. I'm happy to, if you got anything specific you'd like to raise, I'm happy to, Lee, if you want to come into the conversation briefly. You want to?
Sorry, Lee, we didn't catch that. Say that again.
Sorry, it's Mike. I work with Lee, but Lee's just been called away. No, it was just, I think, commitment to sort of working with us in West Fitzrovia and working jointly in the Charlotte Street area.
So absolutely, we think bids are a good thing. We'd like to encourage more of them, and we're very, very happy to support.
Right, thank you.
Awesome, thank you. So moving on, Harry has asked a couple of questions. He says, I'm interested in the relationship with developers in terms of greater transparency and improved consultation. How will you ensure greater transparency between the council and developers and indeed the wider public? And number two, in terms of your approach to improved and wider ranging consultation, will you have a new set of minimum expectations for developers? I note that Councillor Sandquist has a role in terms of consultation reform. Maybe more information could be made on what this includes as well.
That's addressed to you, Jeff. Do you want to start?
Oh, yeah, okay. So it'll be no surprise to anybody that we will not be having a cosy relationship with property developers. That's not to say that people are not encouraged to invest in Westminster. Of course they are. And we want to see the best and highest quality buildings in our city. But we'll be meeting people in City Hall with officers present to take minutes. We won't be meeting them on yachts in the Caribbean or indeed restaurants in Charlotte Street, for example.
There are other ways we can support Charlotte Street.
We'll go and have our own lunches in Charlotte Street. So we're going to keep things very professional and very businesslike. We are going to click a very clear separation between planning policy, which is me, and the planning committee, which Ruth Bush will be chairing the planning committee. So I will be meeting developers and taking minutes, but the planning committee will be entirely separate from that and will judge the planning applications on their merits against the plan, the city plan and all the associated documents. And our observation, and my observation, having spent the last 4 years on Westminster's planning committee, is the committee's quite often not been following its own plan. It's been approving things and rejecting things, which it probably shouldn't have been. So my expectation is the new planning committee will take a different view on things like affordable housing and on the speed we need to adopt measures to fight climate change. I don't know that for certain because the committee is independent and it's not whipped, so the councillors on the committee can take their own views. But I think you're going to see a slightly different mood there. So that transparency in the process should be there from day one. What was the second question?
About consultation. You can talk about it.
Oh yes. So consultation is a wide term. So the council recently published new guidelines for developers on how they should undertake consultations, which was a best practice document, which we're hoping that everyone's going to adopt. But we're also very concerned about how the council itself conducts consultations, and I think the council officers here will admit that it's not been one of Westminster's strengths over the last few years. So we're taking a complete new look at how consultations are run. And the reason for that is because there's been far too much top-down imposition of ideas and concepts from City Hall on a we know best basis. And we're quite firm with the view that we here don't know best, and we want to start consulting from a much earlier stage on buildings or public realm or whatever. So everybody gets the chance to input their ideas of what we should be doing, rather than saying, here's a new scheme, what do you think? And maybe we can change a bit around the edges. And that's what, and there's a question coming up, I know, about Oxford Street, but that's one of the reasons why that programme has run into the sand, is because consultation has been done either too late or not at all. So yeah, we are very determined to have a completely new approach to how we do consultations.
And specifically in relation to planning as well, we're trying to make the process just more navigable to the ordinary person. It's about to making sure the council website explains what the processes are, how to access it, and trying to encourage people to put easy to understand summaries of.
Yeah, we're going to be redesigning the office's reports on planning applications, for example, to make them more intelligible to everybody.
Yeah, and just helping the general public navigate that process is absolutely key. But the principle, as Jeff outlined, applies not just to planning but across the council, is that we want to consult earlier and more often and be more flexible. Sometimes we will have views on things, sometimes we will have genuinely open minds on things. We want to listen from you, from what you have to say, and just create a greater sort of professionalism. We want a business-like relationship with business where we can get stuff done for both mutually. Our job is to represent our residents in those interests, but businesses will come to us with interest, and it's about getting mutually beneficial outcomes out of that process done in a professional way. Brilliant.
You touched on Oxford Street, Jeff. Max, as you saw, asked, it's early days, but is there a joint cabinet view on the way forward for the Oxford Street district?
So there's definitely a view on the way not to go forward. So everything is under review. You won't be surprised to know after 65 years of one administration that a new administration says, well, actually, pretty much everything is under review. And that's particularly true for the large capital projects, which are involving a considerable amount of taxpayers' money, and we need to be really sure and really careful about how we spend that money. So we're committed to Oxford Street and the West End thriving, and to working with all the stakeholders to do that. My observation is that the public realm could be much improved. But the key problem in Oxford Street today is it's got the wrong kind of shops, and short-term action to change the mix of tenants so that we have the right kind of outlets, not just shops, but maybe leisure and hospitality too, is critical. And on public realm, we're keen to do small projects quickly that deliver a difference, rather than large projects which take years and may never happen. And we are keen to work with and consult with the local community, the residents and the business community, to make sure we're getting those done in the right order. But everything under review.
But at the same time, it's recognising, as Jeff said, it's a move from the sort of grand ambitions to what is deliverable, because ultimately we recognise we're on the clock here in Oxford Street in terms of we've got to get things right over the next couple of years to help maintain and sustain it as this business hub for us. So we recognise that we're going to the guts of everything, reviewing everything, but at the same time recognising what we have to make sure we're delivering over the coming weeks and months. But yes, more will come out of that process. We're committed to making Oxford Street great, but it's how we do it is what we're looking at in detail.
Well, and I just saw the question or the comment from Neil flying past. So we're very keen to do more pop-ups and to triangulate between the site owners, the business community, and charities and social enterprises that might take the space. And there's two going through at the moment where we're remitting business rates, or part of the business rates, in order to make that happen, and keen to do more of that. And if you've got people who want to run pop-ups, then please ask them to get in touch with the team here. Because and by the way, this applies not just to Oxford Street,
across the city,
but where we've got vacant space in other of our retail parades, keen to put pop-ups in there too, until we can get the economy back to the state where we have long-term tenants paying good rents.
But it's using those empty and underused spaces to help local businesses kick on and be the help shape the high street for the future. And but as Jeff said, that's a pan-city approach, not just the West End. And we, as well as
that sort of brokerage role, we will also be looking at some strategic acquisitions in certain places, but those will probably be more on the sort of local high streets rather than in the West End.
So Marcus has a question, Jeff, for you about sustainability in the planning process and the retrofit first policy. How do you envisage this to be implemented in practice, and how will scrutiny of a scheme's justification for demolition be different to the current approach? Any advice for developers in approaching this would be much appreciated.
So that's a very good question. So the new city plan was published last year. It has some wording about retrofitting and about demolish and rebuild needing to be justified on a whole life carbon approach. I think we haven't seen that tested through the whole process yet, and the Marks and Spencer's application, which was to demolish their store in the Marble Arch store and rebuild a much larger building, which now sits with Michael Gove for review. I think it's going to be a key part of the puzzle in understanding, as a local authority, what is possible under the current arrangements and current policy. Because we know the government's also looking at strengthening tests on retrofitting against demolish and rebuild. So we don't want to put a stop to all new buildings, right? So we're not saying that we want to move to a world where you cannot build a new building in Westminster. What we want to do is to increase the bar, or indeed put a hurdle there to jump over to demonstrate why the release of all the embodied carbon is necessary. There's already been a change of attitude amongst the planners since the new administration has come in the pre-application discussions. I think they are having more robust discussions with the development community to justify why this is necessary and why either demolish or rebuild, or why the use of certain materials is important, and clearly to equip new buildings with what they need to generate less carbon as they're operational, be that heat pumps and so on. So we probably will be bringing forward changes to the environmental SPD over the course of the next year or so. We're still working through ideas on that. Was that answer helpful?
Marcus, was that answer helpful, Jeff asks?
Yeah, no, that's great, Jeff. So, I mean, do you envisage kind of, I mean, particularly in the bigger schemes, it's quite clear that the M&S scheme was nonsensical, really, and completely unsustainable. But anything on that kind of scale, particularly, would certainly probably not be considered very favourably.
So, I mean, ultimately, as I was saying earlier on, it's for our planning committee to judge whether the benefits a scheme brings outweigh the negatives. And so clearly, if you're building a large hospital, that's different to if you're building a large office block or a large block of luxury flats. But that's the balance that we need to be looking at.
And the key thing in policy terms is just making sure that the work is done to justify the release of embodied carbon. And it's putting the processes and policies in place that make people do that work, I think, is the approach. And then the schemes can be judged on their merits in the round rather than just in more narrow terms.
So moving on, Ellie asks about the impact of COVID, which is still biting for the hospitality industry, and how and what is the council's plan to facilitate and help businesses rebuild? Will there be more relaxation in licensable hours, extension of pavement licenses, training support to entice people to join the industry? The facilitating of the above would make a big difference to businesses flourishing and contributing immensely to the economy.
So On training and support, absolutely, definitely, we want to be doing a lot more on that. We want to find, and also that's a brokerage between people who are looking for jobs and employers who are looking for employees, particularly post-Brexit. We understand there are some real challenges there, particularly for the hospitality sector. And it's, the key thing is, and there's a job of work that the hospitality sector needs to do as well to show that it is potentially a career path for people as well. I mean, not everyone wants a career when they go for a job, but some people do, and some people will be put off if there isn't a progression there. So I think there's a job of work that we need to do on more broadly. In terms of relaxation of licence hours, I would imagine that is reasonably unlikely, but I will defer to Aisha on that in a second. On the extension of pavement licences around the alfresco scheme, I think we have been very clear that there are many places in Westminster where alfresco worked and worked well. We will be going forward to be looking at how we can support a community-led approach to expanding those. I know in my ward the alfresco scheme in my patch was very popular, but that's it. It will be driven by what works in a site-specific way rather than a general relaxation of appropriateness, because we know there are certain streets in Soho where it was just creating vertical drinking on a massive scale, not necessarily even to do with the tables themselves. It just acted as a honeypot for everything else, which made life unbearable for those residents in those areas. So they will not be proceeding. Aisha, do you want to come in on anything to do with licensing? I think the general,
Yeah.
we're very sceptical.
Yeah, so obviously with licensing, if it comes under the CIA, the community of impact area, it's very difficult for us to increase the hours, because obviously we need to bear in mind obviously residents that live there and have a balanced kind of agreement at the end of any kind of licensing application. But if it's in a non-CIA area, then perhaps yes, we could, if there was an argument for that place of for that premises to open for extended hours, because I remember, I think it was halfway through the pandemic, we had a lot of license applications that were extending their hours because they couldn't have enough covers in the restaurant because of obviously the 2 meter kind of distancing policy. So they weren't having enough covers to kind of make their business viable. So in those situations, we did extend those hours, but it was only for a short term. But every application is granted on its own merits. So if you do have a business that you need to extend, you are free to make that application. And what I would say is to engage with residents beforehand, make sure they understand your reasonings why you want to extend those hours, and I think it's just it's about communicating those the offerings that you have with your residents and other businesses in the area. But feel free to email me if you have any questions or anything that you want to raise separately. I'm happy to answer. Thank you.
And thanks, Aisha. I'm wondering, Hayley, do you want to say a couple of words about the hospitality employment scheme?
Yes, sure. Thanks very much. So yes, we are actually investing in some vital infrastructure and capacity building to really look at how we can do things a bit differently. So we've partnered with a couple of business improvement districts and Step Ahead, a social enterprise, look at how we can widen the employee talent pool to attract new entrants to the sector, obviously expanding opportunities for Westminster residents as well, but also looking at working with the sectors in retail, hospitality and leisure to see how we can revolutionise the campaign to actually make it much more attractive and really look at the terms and conditions being offered to make them more attractive and appealing to attract a wider set of new market entrants to these jobs. And as councillors Hug and Barraclough have already said, and Councillor Rocker, it is also about looking at career pathways, not just looking at filling vacancies. So we think that this is a really interesting development. It's about creating some much needed breathing space within the market to actually have a look at doing things differently and breeding some innovation. and we're really hopeful. So that scheme has just launched. I'll put some details in the chat and provide them to Amy, who organised the session, so that we can send out information on how to contact those providers.
Brilliant. Thanks, Hayley. So moving on, I'm conscious of time. I want to get through as many questions as possible.
We can run a bit longer.
So I'm going to take two together. So one is from Kay, who says, do we have any thoughts on the new nighttime enterprise zones to revive high streets after 6 o'clock, and will we be bidding? And Rob asks about views on large-scale pedestrianisation and active travel of central areas, and generally on alfresco dining and leisure, which I know we've touched on a little bit before. So nighttime enterprise zones and large-scale pedestrianisation and alfresco.
I've only been doing this job for a month, and I'm afraid I can't answer the question about nighttime enterprise zones, but there's something in my diary about it, so I will be I'll be better informed shortly. And,
yeah, I mean, it was announced today, and I think the motivation for asking, obviously, Westminster's never traditionally had a nighttime economy strategy. It's got a licensing framework, but it's a sort of compliance framework rather than a celebration of the nighttime economy. And I think my colleagues on this would agree that the nighttime economy contributes an enormous amount to Westminster's economy, but it does need to be carefully curated. And I think what the programme is about is recognising that high streets are sometimes safer when there is activity at ground floor in some of these outer high streets, and that's what the fund is targeting. So looking at other high streets in Westminster where licenses could potentially change, not focused on the West End, but it's focused on the sort of outer lying high streets. I just thought it'd be quite interesting for some of your levelling up ambitions on some of the other high streets.
Well, absolutely, and I now understand why the nighttime czar has got a meeting heard next week. I presume that's what this is about. So yeah, very, very keen to hear what it's about. We do want to direct nighttime activity to areas where we don't have huge residential communities.
It's a very delicate balance, but actually, if you look at European cities and squares in European cities, and you walk back through European cities and it feels safe where there are restaurants and people, and actually some of our high streets and residential areas don't necessarily have any natural surveillance. So we recognise that nighttime economy does provide some elements.
Yeah, so I mean, I think you're pushing it a half open door. But we will. I
think the key word you used there, Kay, earlier was curate. I think that's it has to be a managed process in the round. And bluntly, there are certain places in Westminster that are like the continent, with big wide piazzas where you can have sound dissipate and stuff like that. But we're also a medieval city with narrow streets and stuff like that where everyone's living cheap by jowl. I think we have to look at a horses for courses approach in different places.
It's also we've got to define by night time, right? I mean, doing anything at 8 o'clock in the evening and 2 o'clock in the morning.
It's high streets after 6 o'clock, not high streets.
But it spins off a bit to the question about pedestrianisation, because clearly, one of the reasons why pedestrianisation doesn't always work is because you end up with streets where there's no people on, and it doesn't feel like a safe environment. So we don't have it. We have aspirations to increase walking and cycling, and to decrease the amount of traffic. We're going to do that slowly and in response to bottom-up builds of small projects that make sense and have community support, and that may or may not involve certain streets being closed to traffic for all or part of the day. But we're very much on the page for that. But we're not on the page for like huge projects to close streets permanently.
And I think the key thing is it needs to be resident led, and it needs to be and certainly the focus in our manifesto is around our community high streets. It's about where people live, and it's making a more livable city where people live. And ultimately, we recognise that some of the challenges around pedestrianisation, when the debate was going on about Oxford Street 4 years ago, is that it was displacing traffic from where people were coming to work and visit into places where people live. And that's the square thing. And ultimately, we are employed by Westminster's residents. That's the core thing. Westminster residents hugely value the business community and everyone else that make it a great city to live in, but ultimately our employers are the people of Westminster, and that's what we have to deliver for.
Brilliant. So the next question is from Dan, around hundreds of privately owned properties in Westminster that are vacant for longer than a year, typically held by offshore companies as cash car parks, he says. Would the council look at measures to take control of such long-term vacant property or engage with owners with a view towards temporary social use or housing?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a twin track approach here. I mean, we've talked about it very briefly in terms of the candy stores, in terms of and other stuff at the beginning in terms of shops and retail outlets. But there is a massive issue around property ownership in Westminster being held through a series of opaque shell companies which go in and out of various UK overseas territories and all sorts of things with owned by people who are not real people. And there's a whole economic governance question that is going on, has been brought to the fore in the wake of the situation in the war in Ukraine, around Russian money and stuff like that. There is a big piece that needs to be driven forward, and Westminster Council will be engaging actively in the debate around Economic Crime Bill 2 to help us tackle these issues around transparency and accountability of some of these offshore firms. But there is also both that cause huge problem in our residential areas where homes not being brought into use, and cause issues in our commercial areas where there is a lack of accountability between the people who own the properties and what ends up on the street. So there's a job of work that we can do to engage with certain landowners where we do know who they are, to get things to more socially useful uses, whether that's on the commercial side in terms of pop-ups and other productive uses, and on the housing side, it's bringing them back into use. And obviously, we have our core desire is to build more social housing and other forms of affordable housing. So there's things we want to do there, but there is a big transparency and accountability piece that needs to happen at a national level, but Westminster is the epicenter of where some of this happens in terms of dirty money from across the world. So really keen to tackle that.
Mark Williams from Holborn asks, we run a comprehensive public art programme called Art of London, making arts and culture accessible and promoting the area's cultural activity and institutions collectively. Enjoy great collaboration with Westminster's events team. We're running a season of public art again this summer with the theme Brighter Future, engaging with the likes of City Lions, etc. Already is the new administration supportive of such initiatives? Yes, we are supportive of them. What I would say about culture, which I touched on at the very, very start, though, is that we're keen to increase access to it in particular. We also think that some of the cultural stuff that we'll be commissioning, we want it to be more inclusive, and we want it to tell the story about what Westminster is today and where it's going, fairer, greener, more innovative. As I said, we want access and inclusion to be baked into a lot of the things that we do and with the partners that we work with. So we're really blessed in Westminster in terms of the cultural institutions that exist. We want to make sure that they're being used and are accessible to as wide a community as possible, particularly some parts of our city that perhaps haven't had access to culture in the same way as others have. So yes, supportive, but we'll be having a focus on access. The next question is on busking from Robin, and he says the previous council introduced a streets entertainment license scheme that's been in place for 12 months and is due for review. Is this something the new council will pick up on? I'm not sure Aisha is here.
Yeah, I'm here now. Sorry.
Do you want to pick this up? I know you've got to go to your governance meeting, but
so we are very keen to look at the busking policy, and I am in talks with the licensing team about this. So over the next few weeks, we'll be inviting hopefully the Buskers Association and other residents, buskers, individual buskers, to come along and have a meeting with us and give us what their feedback is on the new kind of rules around busking and the allocated areas that have been introduced in the last couple of years, and how that has worked, because we are keen to get it right, and obviously it needs, we have to strike a balance between buskers and obviously residents and businesses, and we are about supporting any kind of business, and busking is one of them. So yeah, very keen to to speak to many buskers as possible to get this right. Thank you.
But yeah, key thing, Robin, yeah, make sure you and any other people have got views on how the scheme's been going to feed that information in.
There's a quick one for you, Jeff, from Hannah, who says, what are your timescales for introducing a design panel and who will be leading on it?
So timescales as soon as possible, because I'm really keen that we have a design, I think probably something more like a design and place review panel, also including some expertise on sustainability. And this would be an independent panel that would advise the planning committee on the major applications, not the small ones, but the very big ones. Councillor James Small Edwards, who's the deputy, the deputy cabinet member for the things I'm responsible for, will be leading that from a political perspective, working with Deirdre Armsby, the planning director.
Wonderful, thanks, Jeff. And then I think we've got the final question of the evening from Kate. Kate says, we are a charity social enterprise and we're in the process of a proposition to take on a closed Westminster pub in an area of need, turn it into a cafe creative desk space, but importantly a digital media hub with training and career pathways. Is there any funding that might help us get this better achieved?
Kate, I think the pub in question is in my ward, and I remember we were in touch a few months ago before the election, and I'd be very keen to hear where you are on that, because it's one of the key. Apologies if you've moved on to a different pub, but it's one of the key areas for the economic regeneration of that part of North Westminster. So if we can find a way to work with you to help get that site back into use, be very interested in doing that. The answer of whether there's money, I don't know the answer to that, but we could have some active conversations about that, because that site is a really key one for that part of Harrow Road coming back to life.
It's moved along a little bit with the mayor's office, so we're at the kind of the next stage. So it could move quite rapidly now, but we don't want to lose the premises because it's perfect.
So, we need to plug you in with Hayley and the business team. So if you could drop, if Adam's got your details, or drop me an email.
Yeah,
and we'll plug you in with the right people.
And also, I believe, did we put you in touch with the Harrow Road Place plan team as well? Because I know they're
we're working quite strongly with them now.
Yeah, so that's fine. It's looping them in with the people who might have the money, I think.
Which pub is this?
It's the
Windsor Castle. Oh wow, brilliant!
It's a pub that can't be a pub.
Pub that can't be a pub. Yeah. It's the governance.
Yeah, lovely. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. So I think that is all the questions that we've had. So over to you, Adam, to close.
Yeah, I'm just wanting to check whether there's anything that's been scooting down the bottom. I think there's been some active discussions that have been going on. And it's a bit difficult to keep on top of the chat. So last call for any questions he wants to ask us with hands before we go. If not, I will wrap things up. Look, want this to be the start of some conversations rather than just a one-off. We are very keen to broaden the base of businesses and enterprises, social enterprises that we are working with across Westminster, and keen to make sure that the council, corporately at an officer level as well as a member level, knows who you are, and we can help broaden that network for future discussions. And I think there's a job of work to do, looping you into what's going on in your local areas, and there's also that job of work about making sure that your voices are heard in some of the strategic discussions that the council is having that's relevant to you. And the short answer is we are learning about what it is to run the council, and where we can make a difference. But we're really keen to get your views on what works well, what doesn't work well, and just do get in touch with all the officers who put their information there. Do get in touch with all four of the councillors who are here on the call if there are things you think we can help with. But just thank you very much for your time, and really looking forward to working with you over the next few years.
Brilliant, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.